Okay? I can see it, but it doesn't exist. And, I was near the door in the back of the room. I was always closest to the door because I was having so much problems at school. And, I'm like, okay, whatever, if you got a dot that doesn't exist, I can go with that for now. And then he said, this is a series of dots that he placed together and made a line and said this is dimension 1 and it doesn't exist either. It still doesn't have volume. And, that seems consistent to me. Then he placed a bunch of lines that are made out of dots together, made a plane, called it 2D, and said this is the dimension that that your comic strips lives in. It still doesn't exist. It still doesn't have volume. Well, until then, although, it was kind of a bizarre approach, it was consistent. But then he did something that seemed like a miracle. He grabbed 6 of these planes and put them together on the blackboard, made a cube, and said, this is dimension 3, 3D, that one you exist in. And I was in the back of the room, and I'm like, oh my God, how can that be? And I could tell that all the other kids in the room were like, huh? But nobody was saying anything. I wasn't about to put my hand up because I knew the next thing that was going to happen is the door was going to get open and I was going to get kicked out again. So I didn't want to do that. So I didn't say anything, but it didn't make sense because it's like that was a mystery cube. Because if you have a dot that doesn't exist, that makes a line that doesn't exist, that makes a plane that doesn't exist. You slap 6 non-existing planes together, you don't get existence. All you get is non-existence to the 4th. Okay? It's got nothing to do with existence. You just have got a bunch of non-existent dots together, so nothing exists. And that was not logical. And I have a tendency to be an extremely logical human being. And it turns out that Buckminster Fuller, I found out later, had the same problem at school. He wrote about it in his book. And he didn't understand how this worked neither, and he didn't thought it was correct. And actually, through my research, I found that this is an ancient riddle. It's mentioned in ancient manuscripts that are from the Middle East and so on, and there is all sorts of treaties about this problem, although this problem is the foundation of our understanding of physics and dimensions. And all of our knowledge is actually based on it. And it creates a lot of problems. This simple riddle that is unsolved has generated a whole set of distortion in our societies and in the way we do physics and the way we understand the universe and how we relate to it. And we're going to see that today. We're going to see this error just come back and bite us in the butt every time we come around the corner. You all following this? Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I was going home from my school that night, and, I had an hour and a half bus ride back home. And that's because I kept on getting kicked out of the schools closest to my home. So I had to go further and further, and some physicists once told me, actually, I was furthering my education that way. And I thought that was true because I had all this time to think when I was in the bus. So I was thinking and thinking, and I was going in this bus, and I'm like, I'm not living another day without solving this. I had no idea that nobody had been able to solve this or anything like that. Nobody told me it was not solvable. Nobody told me I shouldn't be working on this when I was 10. So I was in my bus going, I cannot survive another day on this planet without knowing what the heck a dimension is. And what is this dimension I'm in? And what are these other dimensions I'm experiencing, or these other energies I'm experiencing, and so on. So I'm thinking and I'm thinking and I'm thinking, and I've got a goal in my head that I'm going to solve this before I get off the bus. So I'm, the bus is getting crowdier, and, it's like more and more people in there, and it's getting really kind of tight. I'm like sitting on this little bench, and I'm getting squashed, and I'm getting really uncomfortable, and I'm trying to think about all this, and I'm like, I got to find a solution. And at one point I thought, well, maybe I should like try to get my mind out of this bus, because it's just getting too crowded in here. So I started to expand my mind, and I rose above the bus, and I saw, in my mind's eye, I saw the bus becoming a dot. And then I rose further, and I saw the Earth becoming a dot. And I rose further, I saw the solar system becoming a dot. And I rose further, and I saw the galaxy becoming a dot. And then I flew back into the galaxy, into the solar system, and back into the, I saw the Earth, and then I saw the bus, and I found the bus, and flew back into my body. And I thought, wow. And I looked at my hand, and I went, I flew into my hand in my mind's eye, and I saw it was made out of dots. I didn't know those were called cells, And then I flew into one of the cells in my mind's eye, and I saw that cell had to be made of thousands of little dots we call atoms. And I flew into, actually, billions of little dots we call atoms. And then I flew into one of those dots, and I saw that inside the atom there was a whole bunch of other dots in the middle, and so on. And actually, that was my first glimpse at the fractal nature of the universe. And I thought, oh my God, I know how to solve this. It's a dot within a dot within a dot to infinity. And the only thing that exists is the dot. Within each point, all information is available. Each point contains the whole. So the only true existence is the point. And from that point, or from an arrangement of points, you get all of reality. Wow. I was onto something. I got really excited. It's like, that's the way it goes. Each point contains the whole. Each point has all information. Each point is connected to all other points in the universe. And then the universe arranges the points in all sorts of different ways and makes all of the things we see. Well, that would mean that each point had to contain infinite amount of energy, infinite amount of information. Well, I got excited, and I'm like, oh my God, I got to tell my mom. So I went back home, I got out of the bus, and I'm all excited. I'm like walking on the cloud. I'm feeling like I've got this illumination, and, I'm on my way to changing the world and all this. And I get home, and I wait for my mom. My mom comes back from work, and I'm like, oh, Mom, I figured out something at school today. It's real important. She smiles, and she's like, oh my God, he finally had an A in the test or something. She thought I did something real good at school. And I'm like, Mom, I figured out that each point contains the whole. Each part of you has infinite involved in it, and each point has a connection to everything else. And I'm telling her all that, and she looked at me, and she, part of your curriculum at school, is it? And I think you should go back to it. You're not doing, and and my mom is kind of a pragmatic person, and she's a Roman Italian, woman, and she just looked at me and said, anyway, today, I don't feel infinite. I'm not feeling infinite, so why don't you just go back to your curriculum, Go do your homework or something. And I got disappointed. It crushed me. I was like, oh my God, she's right. How can a point contain the whole if a point has a finite boundary? If the body has a finite boundary, how can it have infinity in it? So I was like, oh, I gotta go back to the drawing